Hello, I'm your host with the most, Nicholas Thomas. I'm here today at the Alto Biz podcast. Today we have a very special episode with two very special guests. Before we get to the episode, I would like to thank our two sponsors, hand sanitizer. Stay sanitized during these very difficult times. And our other sponsor, who is going through difficult times as we are, Venti. Getting people drunk since 1989. Today, I have Eero Saarinen with me and Iiro Marttikainen, who are consultants that deal with comparative consumer behavior. It sounds very sophisticated stuff. One of you guys want to tell me a little bit more where you guys are from?
Sure, but first of all, thanks for having us.
It's
a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure.
But like you said, we do consulting and research in the field of comparative consumer behavior. We're from the company Jorma LLC. We do work with different kinds of companies and organizations, and maybe Iiro can talk a little bit more about what we've been up to recently.
Cool.
Yeah, so we do a lot of partnerships with different kind of companies. We have really small restaurants even, and very big luxury brands even. And the last one that we did a study for a sunglasses company, a luxury brand, about status threat and consumption and the linkage between it.
Very interesting. So status threat, just in a sense, is that people are threatened, their status is threatened, or how does this relate to the product?
Very much so, yeah. So we'll come to that in a bit. We need to understand social identity first. So, which is a person's sense of who they are based on the groups that they belong to. So social psychologist Henry Tosfeld proposed that the groups to which people belong are an important source of pride and self-esteem, and groups give us a sense of social identity.
Well, that's true.
A sense of belonging to the social world.
Yes.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, all my friend groups that I'm a part of, this podcast community that I'm part of, you identify with those things.
Exactly, and we all have a sense of belonging.
Do people also identify with brands in a sense? Is that how this is going to connect?
Yeah, you're spot on actually. So we'll come to that in a bit, but let's talk about the three mental processes that are involved with evaluating ourselves and others. So kind of us versus them.
Yeah.
Kind of positioning. So there are three processes that take place in a particular order, and the first one is categorization. And you know how we categorize objects in order to kind of understand them and identify what they are,
What do you
right?
mean?
Well, categorization of anything, foods, just different categories of things.
Exactly.
It can be applied to everything.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be unlimited.
But similarly, we categorize people in order to understand the social environment. So, are there any examples of that you could think of how we categorize people?
I mean, we categorize, for example, here at Alto Business School, that is a group of people, and then we have another university here, SUMC, and we kind of identify with those groups and categorize them in that sense.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's spot on.
An example?
Yeah,
that's
and
a
then
great one.
Nationalities, cultures,
Or
religion.
different branded products, you have our Studio Marshall headphones on. I have these Sennheisers on, and
Yeah, of course, people can be categorized based on the products they prefer to use. And then there's the second stage, which is social identification. So we adopt the identity of the group that we have categorized ourselves as belonging into, right?
Yes.
So if, for example, you have categorized yourself as a student, chances are that you'll adopt the identity of a student and begin to act in the ways that you believe a student is supposed to act, and kind of conform to the norms of that group, right?
Yeah.
Make sense? And then there's the final stage, which is comparison. So once we've categorized ourselves as a part of a group and identified with that group, we tend to compare our group with the others. So again, the kind of us versus them.
Yeah.
And our self-esteem is to a large extent controlled by this. So it's increased or maintained if our group is seen to compare to other groups favorably, and vice versa decreased if if we are perceived to compare unfavorably.
So is
to
this
other
social
groups.
identity that is created through groups? Is that something that is that kind of like the status you're building up your status? Is
Exactly.
status a perceived thing from yourself? Because like
Sta-
the whole
status
thing
is
is like
largely-
status threat, right?
Yeah, so
Like,
status
so,
is largely
A personal
Uh,
thing.
the status that you perceive to
Yeah.
have is dictated largely by the groups that you identify with. Make sense?
Yes.
So that brings us to status threat.
Yeah. So that is actually that's links to the
Links
status
perfect.
threat. Yeah.
Made a perfect loop there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All connects together. But yeah, status threat occurs when the perceived competence, like of an individual group, is like threatened or devalued, which would happen in the comparison stage at the later part of your social identity. When you form your group, then you see it and start comparing, and your status that you've like built up is threatened. So examples of this would be like moral behavior of an individual or group being questioned, for example. Like you probably noticed that sometimes you feel a little threatened to compare yourself to others or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what we're trying to figure out with our like study that we've been doing.
Okay, so
With the
like if
sunglasses.
so you guys did it for a sunglass company.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I'm assuming you guys collected some sort of data as you would in most experiments. How did that process kind of go? And yeah.
So we had a survey that we had with different consumers, and we were like, we're asking how do they view like their brands and what they're like appreciate and their own status, and then when they have a conflict situation and is their status threatened by somebody else of lower status having those same like luxury kind of glasses.
Did you guys do some kind of a controlled experiment where you had like some variable that
Yes.
changed?
So we had three kind of variables. So the whole story went that we were asking like if you let's say you get some I don't know Gucci glasses. Like
Yeah.
you probably work for it. You know you gotta spend them cost a lot of money. So it brings like you want to keep your heavy. So let's say you have a high status, and you buy the Gucci glasses because it like it's part of you.
Yes.
So let's say you go to the story goes that you are at a like pool at a resort, so you're wearing them, and then you see the pool boy there walking with the same pair of glasses. So, and then you ask the guy like, hey, where'd you get those? And the pool boy says that there's a sale down the street, and like everybody has these. These are like
Oh.
for everybody, you know.
Okay.
But then the other group,
Like, but they're normally expensive glasses that you know.
yes, they're
And you,
like
it's the
high.
idea here because it's like high quality, so you're supposed to you identify with the Gucci glasses, correct, as you said.
Yes, exactly.
And you, let me guess, like now, you're testing to see if you're threatened.
Yes, we're seeing like different stories of if the pool boy has worked for them hard or if he has not.
Okay.
So, and then we're comparing it, and does that affect you? How is your status friend, and how do you view the brand, and its like value after that?
Okay.
Yeah, and so like what all this is based off of is like Ira said earlier.
What were the findings, by the way?
We'll come to that in a bit. But like the moral behavior of an individual or group is questioned could be status threat. But then in this case, what the status threat actually comes from is an individual being associated with a group that they don't feel they belong to or they don't want to be associated with. So if you feel like you're kind of a higher class person and you've been able to afford the Gucci glasses, and now all of a sudden this pool boy, who you may think of as a kind of a lower class person, if you will, now all of a sudden he's wearing the same glasses, so you can feel that you become associated with that lower class. Make sense?
Yes. So is this the hypothesis that you guys had? at the beginning?
Yes.
There's been like many studies about this before, and so we were just like trying to confirm it on the sunglasses and to this company.
But what did the results
correlations.
show?
But what we found out though is that our study like contradicts it though.
Contradicted it.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, in all the scenarios, we found that the pool boy wearing the glasses, regardless of whether he had to work really hard for them or save up a lot of money, it didn't really affect the consumer behavior or the future buying intentions of the consumer, which was really interesting.
In a sense, like people have their social status. You know, do some people? Do you guys have like a question that asked, like, would you like rank yourself? Rank yourself like socially.
Yeah, we had a
Yeah.
question, and then most of our respondents were kind of in the middle class or kind of in the higher end of that middle class.
I would assume that like people from higher classes or that identify higher can feel that status threat more because they just identified themselves as higher. So,
Yeah.
did you guys do any findings on that in the study or?
The problem we had was that our sample size
Quite small. It was
was
limited.
quite small, and we didn't have enough respondents who felt that they belonged to those higher classes. So the sample size simply wasn't
Wasn't
good
ample.
enough.
Are there other studies out there that show something along those lines?
Yeah,
Yes. There's,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
there's a lot of studies.
But like we said, our study kind of contradicted other previous studies.
Very
about the
interesting.
topic
So
and our hypothesis.
People were not threatened.
Yes.
No.
That's what we
That's,
found.
yes. So that's the surprising part of it.
I would assume that like someone would be threatened by that.
That's the usual expectation, and all like some studies have shown it. That it goes this way. That your status is usually threatened when it gets to like to you feel.
At the same time, though, studies have shown that if you feel very strongly about the brand or a particular brand, and a single incident like that is not enough to kind of break your relationship with the brand.
Yeah.
And in this case, we might have to further study this, but in this case, it was only one person.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. There goes my phone. But if there was like a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if a bigger group of individuals
Yeah.
from a group that you don't want to be associated with was wearing the glasses, it would be really interesting to find out whether that would be.
It's interesting to
It
think
would be a different
what would
result.
happen.
Yeah.
Because I would almost think that it doesn't really matter. Because in a sense, like a lot of people wear Vans, but I like the shoe. You know, I think it's more about the product, but you know, it really
It's
might
probably
matter.
the brand. Yeah. When it comes to like the self-brand connection, you know.
Yeah.
Then again, is Vans really a luxury brand?
No.
So, and then
That is fair.
Gucci, on the other hand, is a luxury
All
brand.
these sneakers.
But-
and- yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a different field in that sense. But nonetheless, it's a pretty interesting topic and one that we'd like to further study as well. We've only kind of scratched the surface here,
Yeah.
but we've already made some interesting findings.
Exactly. Yeah. And back to that brand that you were talking about like comparing like connected Vans, that like people have a really like high usually like self connection with a brand. Comes to it's called self brand connection, SBC in short.
SBC.
Yes, and it's a theory made by Escalis in the 80s.
The
No,
80s.
not the 80s, but like
1989.
late 90s, almost authentic. Late 90s, but yeah, it's used to like construct oneself, like brand association between you, so you feel connected to brands, right?
I would say yes.
Yeah. So that's why we're trying to also figure out like how connected do people feel towards the brand.
Yeah, and kind of how much it takes for an incident or an influence to kind of have an effect on the relationship that you have with the brand. And what we found here is that a single kind of lower class person identifying with the same brand is, according to our study, it's not enough to break that relationship or affect it in any significant way.
Very interesting.
Nice. Got many findings out of that.
Yeah, well, that's about all the time we have for today. Unfortunately, we have a very busy schedule today. Thank you again for coming on the podcast. I'd love to have you guys again.
For sure.
You guys should
Thank you
come
for
by
having us.
Bentley sometime, one of our sponsors. And
As soon as it opens.
thank you for tuning in to episodes 49 of the All the Biz podcast. We'll see you next time with your host with the most.